Hello everyone and welcome back to RetroB8. In today's episode I'm going to be talking to you about the C64 Collection Volume 2 that's coming out on the Evercade on the 28th of April. This cartridge will be available for $17.99 and I'll put the links down below where you can buy it. Now you may remember almost a year ago, I think it was almost a year ago now, that I made a video with Lee Nerdy Geezer, and that was about the first volume of the C64 collection that came out. I'll put a link to that video down below in the description. Yeah, definitely go and check that out because I was, let's just say, a little bit critical of the first one. So now it's time for volume 2. How's this one going to go? Well, let's have a look at the games. So those are just a few of the 14 games that come on the cartridge for the Evercade. So what we're going to do now is take a little bit of a close look at each game. So we start off with World Games. World Games is a sports video game developed by Epix for the Commodore 64 in 1986. The game was a continuation in the Epix Sports line that had previously released extremely successful titles such as Summer Games and Winter Games. World Games was given a massive 98% from ZAP64 back in 1986, and it's thoroughly deserved. It's a really good game. Next up we have California Games, which was also released by Epix in 1987. Events include the halfpipe, surfing, roller skating, BMX, flying disc, and of course the dreaded footbag, which I absolutely suck at. Yet again, Epix completely surpassed themselves with another incredible sports simulation, this time scoring 97% in ZAP64. Impossible Mission 2 is a video game developed by Novatrade and published by Epix in 1988. It is a direct sequel to Epix's 1984 hit Impossible Mission and one of my most nostalgic games ever, and possibly the reason why I ended up getting a Commodore 64. Common criticisms of the game was the lack of improvement from the original Impossible Mission. However, if you love the original, then you will probably adore this game too.
Another visitor. Stay a while. Stay forever.
Pitstop II is a 1984 sequel to the 1983 racing game hit Pitstop. The game requires that all players keep an eye on their tyres and fuel gauge, because players are able to pull in for a pit stop to change tyres and refuel. Pitstop 2 earned itself a ZAP Sizzler award with a respectable 89%, definitely being one of the better racing games on the Commodore 64. Uridum is a sci-fi side-scrolling shoot-'em-up originally designed by Andrew Braybook for the Commodore 64. It was published by Hewson and released in 1986. Each level takes place at a fixed altitude just above the surface of the dreadnoughts. Only when enough of the dreadnought's defences have been destroyed, the land now signal is activated, allowing the player to slow the speed down to a minimum and land in the landing zone. After this, the pilot must get out and destroy the mothership. Nebulus, or Tower Toppler as it's otherwise known, is a platform game created by John Phillips, published by Hewson in 1987. Nebulus is a platform game where you control a creature called Pogo. He's on a mission to destroy 8 towers that are being built in the sea by planting bombs at the tower's peaks. Nebulus earned itself a whopping 97% in December 87's edition of ZAP64 magazine. Firelord is an action-adventure game written by Stephen Crow and released in 1986 for the Commodore 64 from Houston. The player controls the knight Sir Galahad, who must explore the cursed kingdom of Tort on a quest to recover the 4 charms of eternal youth. Firelord didn't score too well in TheC64 in February 1987, just getting an overall 68%, mostly the last ability letting the game down. Zamzara is a stunning budget game that was released in 1988 from Racket, costing only $2.99. Bearing in mind this was just a budget release back in the day, the graphics, the animation, the gameplay, it really is such an awesome game and definitely one that isn't talked about enough. This for me is one of the best games on this cartridge. Insects in Space was a game released in 1989, published by Houston, but was originally developed by someone you might have heard of, Sensible Software. The plot of 1,000 sci-fi movies has come true. Earth has been invaded by insects from outer space in this obvious Defender clone. Or that's what you would think, because this isn't just another Defender clone. This is a really great game with a dual planet surface to add something new to it. Sword of Fargoal is a dungeon exploration video game developed by Jeff McCord and published by Epix for the Commodore 64 in 1983. The player controls a warrior who explores numerous levels in a dungeon in search of the titular Sword of Fargoal. Once the Sword of Fargoal is found, a countdown begins and the player must successfully escape the dungeon before the timer runs out or the sword is lost forever. Street Sports Basketball is a 1987 computer basketball game for the Commodore 64, developed by Epix and released in 1987. The game features a 3-a-side basketball match. Each team is made by 3 players with different skills, choosing from different neighbours. After having decided for one of the 4 fields, you can choose between a human opponent or the computer. Then you choose your team, always consisting of 3 players from 10 kids in turns with the opponent. Slayer is a horizontally scrolling shooter developed by Imperial Software and Houston for the Commodore 64 in 1988. In the 1988 Zap Christmas special, Slayer earned itself a silver award, scoring an overall 90% and being described as a brilliant budget version of some of the best recent full-price shoot-em-ups. Mission Impossibubble was released by Houston in 1989. So the story goes, 6 helpless baby bubbles have all been kidnapped, each one hidden inside a maze of fiendish complexity. To help you, or to perhaps honestly confuse you, there's plenty of teleports to zap you from place to place. Again, another game that was originally released on the budget label at £2.99. This was awesome value back in the day, and it scored 90% in TheC64, and they described it as pure entertainment. Cybernoid the Fighting Machine is a shoot-'em-up platformer developed and published in 1988 by Houston. Also worthy of note has to be the music in this game, made by Jeron Tell, one of the best on the Commodore 64 and an absolute legend. The game is split into 3 levels, each consisting of several screens that are transverse via a flip screen system rather than just the normal scrolling. As you can tell, after looking at those 14 games, there's a considerable improvement on the quality of games that has come out for the Evercade for the Commodore 64. Thankfully, it looks like they may have listened to what everyone's been asking them, and that's just to have a bit of a higher quality and maybe actually play the games that they're putting on there just to see what they're actually like. This time, I think they've got the mix just so much better. It's not there yet, but I'm hoping with possibly Volume 3 that they might get there and give us that absolutely to die for cartridge. So overall, I would definitely recommend buying this cartridge. However, that would mean that you have to own an Evercade, which I don't, because I'm just going to stick with the original Commodore 64 or the Commodore 64 Mini or the Maxi. I just find a lot of these games a little bit more difficult to play like on a joypad, especially the joystick wagglers, you know, the world games. They're going to be a lot harder to play on a joypad than on a joystick. But apart from that, I definitely think that this is quite a decent list of games. So, hope you enjoyed that episode, and until next time, goodbye.